Charting mastery as a physician? What kind of unattainable dream is that? Do you realize that I spend so much time charting that sometimes I just want to sit down and cry? Notes at work, notes at home, notes in the evenings, notes on the weekends. Work-life balance? Yeah, right. I went into medicine to care for patients, not to be drowning in charting. What is the meaning of all this? If you have had any of these thoughts or heard one of your colleagues complaining with stories and similar complaints, know that you are not alone. Keep listening, because this episode is for you. Welcome to the MedEdWell Podcast, where physicians get empowered to take the next step in their wellness, personally, professionally, and financially. I'm your host, Dr. Ryan Stegink, a practicing general pediatrician and online entrepreneur. Thank you so much for joining me here on another episode of the MedEdWell Podcast. I want to take a moment to thank all of you as you continue to take great care of patients and families, particularly in the midst of an ongoing pandemic as of the time of this recording. I know it's hard and stressful, overwhelming. Many of you are burned out and looking for encouragement. My hope is that this podcast would be an encouragement to each of you, that you would reach out and check on your colleagues and staff, seeing how they are doing and providing a listening ear. While many of the topics discussed in this podcast are about personal wellness, the goal is for you to find balance so that you are able to continue serving others, since medicine is inherently a service-oriented profession. One of the biggest threats to wellness in medicine these days revolves around charting and workflows. A 2018 study found that physicians were averaging 1 to 2 hours of charting for every hour of patient care and another 1 to 2 hours of charting or clerical work in the evening. Say what? That is crazy. No wonder there are issues in the system with wellness. Today, we'll break down 4 domains of charting to help you move toward mastery. Lest you think you can't do this, that you'll never achieve mastery, be encouraged. Though I have grown a lot, I am not a master either, and my passion for improving drives me as I look to take the next step in my wellness. Take a step towards progress, not perfection. But before we break down these 4 domains of charting, let's hear from today's sponsor. Getting a financial education seems daunting until you realize that you did way harder things in medical training. The White Coat Investor has been promoting financial literacy for doctors since 2011 and has great courses to help you make a financial plan, evaluate financial advice, and pursue your wellness. CME is included on some of the courses, making them a perfect fit for those unused professional funds. I have personally taken the Fire Your Financial Advisor course and found it super valuable in my own financial education. I encourage you to visit the link in the show notes and consider signing up for a White Coat Investor course today. And now, back to today's show. So 1 to 2 hours of charting in clinic for every hour of direct patient care, and another 1 to 2 hours of personal time doing work tasks? Sounds real sustainable, right? I remember starting my new job out of residency, and one of my colleagues told me how their kids knew that they had to chart after hours. They came and snuggled in bed, and then ran off to play. I listened and thought, what in the world? I don't want that. Residency was hard, finishing rounds, writing up 8 or 10 notes, and yet in many ways, attending life is harder. Sure, more responsibility, teams to lead, but charting, why does that have to be so difficult? My colleagues tell me about when it was all paper and though some things still got brought home, but mostly it was more efficient. And yet, here we are, aside from occasional downtimes or individual practices still with paper charting, and most physicians today are doing electronic charting. And it is increasingly complex. Check this box. Select from that menu. Pull this into your note. Is it any wonder these things are taking longer? That more notes are completed after hours or at home? So what's a doc to do? There are definitely things that need to be addressed further upstream from the individual physician level. What actually belongs in a note? And though the changes to the CMS documentation requirements in 2021 make some progress, they are far from sufficient. At a system level, helping develop personalized templates for departments or particular conditions can help some, but in the meantime, With fellow physicians awaiting help and struggling under the crushing load of charting, let's examine together the 4 domains of charting, the 4 areas to consider where we are and where we might want to go. And then we can each take our own next step in our professional wellness. A quick caveat before you just turn this off as one of those self-help, physician heal thyself discussions. No, the system needs reform and optimization further upstream from the individual physician. But at the same time, there are things we can each do to make things more manageable for ourselves as we work towards balance. So the 4 domains or topics. First, navigation, getting around the chart. Second, we'll cover orders, including labs and medications. Third, we will go over notes and some tips around documentation. Fourth, and finally, we will cover messages with a related bonus topic. First, navigation. We all have our own clinical workflows, our routines as we interact with our patients and the medical record. Depending on preferences and availability of technology or other resources, you may or may not chart in the room. You may have a scribe. You may chart in the room concurrently with your visit. Regardless of when you get to the computer, you'll get there eventually, and then you have a few questions. Do I know where to find the things that I need in the chart? Where are they? Can I customize the order of tabs or how things are displayed? What is my routine of going from one section to the next, so I reduce the chances of missing something? You may or may not have that ability to customize your reports, views, filters, or search capabilities. But if you do, this could be time well spent as you understand what your system can do. The other side of navigation involves what shortcut keys or buttons you may be able to use. They may be pre-configured or something you can program custom commands for. It could be as simple as going from the notes to orders and back, or more complex, say pre-populating a message to your staff that will be routed to them on signing. Investing time up front in these ways can reduce clicks or keyboard keystrokes, improving your efficiency and saving you time. They may also reduce the amount of times you switch from keyboard to mouse and back again, which helps your efficiency and, as we'll talk about in the next episode, some of the repetitive stresses that are placed on you as a physician. Furthermore, knowing some of these navigation things can allow you to maintain eye contact and connection better if you do chart in the room, and potentially let you get more of your work done, whether orders, notes, or something else, before you leave the patient's room. So first, we had navigation. The second domain in your charting mastery, there are the orders. This could be labs, medications, imaging studies, medical equipment. Many of these you do have to finish before the patient leaves, so you don't forget, or so that they end up on the patient's paperwork when they leave. You can typically search for them, but sometimes they don't have the default settings the way you want them. That's well and good for 1 or 2 orders, but with a bunch, it gets time-consuming. Lots of clicks. It eats into your clinic flow as 2 extra minutes per patient becomes 20 or more by the end of a full session. Certain orders may default the status as something to be done in the future. Others may be the source of the blood draw. For me, in the outpatient setting, I never order an arterial blood sample, so having the defaults set to peripheral blood draw is 1 less click. Okay, so you have a few ideas for customizing. Now you have to see what your system supports. It may be that there are system or department preference lists that show up in a particular context to show you the most common orders, so you don't have to search for them. Maybe you get in touch with your IT or informatics team about changing some of those preference lists. You may also have the opportunity to make your own preference lists or favorite section. You may be able to set them as labs for today, or a particular dose of a medication with a year's worth of refills. Whatever it is, find out what already exists in your system, figure out what customizations you can and want to make, and then, over time, implement those changes so you can take your next step in meds and orders. So first, we've covered navigation. Second, orders, including meds, labs, and imaging. But now, third, and I think most importantly, is notes. Notes are the cornerstone of thinking about charting mastery and productivity because they typically take way more time than any other aspect of interacting with the medical record. You know that they're important, but important for who? For you, for your colleagues and other medical professionals, for billing, quality, and regulatory entities, for medical legal purposes. As a physician, I want to know what happened to this patient and how should that guide my current management. I also want to be able to share that with the next person to see them, especially if that person's not me, so they can provide good continuity of care. And yet, notes are part of larger efforts to collect data. Many of these things can be very helpful. For instance, clinical decision support can be built into many systems as a way to remind physicians and others of something that may be clinically indicated based on the patient's prior diagnoses. Some data points are collected through various structures around the chart, but an increasing number of them are collected by checking a box or selecting from some sort of menu or drop-down list. The requests may start small. Just add these 2 checkboxes to your templates. And yet, many of the new measures coming down from quality and regulatory entities already do and will in the future require more and more of these inputs. It's just a little menu. Put it here for this patient. Put a different one in for other patients. Don't forget, physicians, we are tracking your progress. With moves to value-based purchasing, an increasing number of physician contracts and compensation plans are including financial incentives for meeting particular metrics. While many of these goals and metrics are good in theory, the barriers to completion are often myriad. Language barriers for screenings that are not available for particular populations, transportation challenges that preclude timely follow-up appointments to document improvement on a measure. These are the tip of the iceberg of social determinants of health, and these too affect quality and documentation when they have to be collected as well. So there are challenges in how some of these data points are collected, and many of them are collected through the notes. Not only does this create efficiency issues for you and your staff, but there are also issues of how notes look to your colleagues and others, how long they are, whether that information is located elsewhere in the chart and could be marked as reviewed there, what actually needs to be in the note. Right now, look for ways to get credit for some of these things from questionnaires before the visit, from something your staff documents, or where you already review other information. It should be team-based care and quality. There may be opportunities to leverage existing workflows for some of these things so that you get the credit you deserve. I know there are certain deficiencies with just doing paper charting, as I recently had the unforeseen opportunity to do 2 days of paper notes during an extended downtime. But it reminded me of my time in medical school in the student-run free clinic, and how only the essentials were put in the note. There were no quality checkboxes or other things to bloat the note with. The 2021 CMS changes allow for some simplification, but I know for myself and others around me, the notes still take a long time overall. For personal workflows around notes and charting, you'll need to look at what kind of templates you have. Examine what you can bring into your note, what you should put into it, and what may be reviewable on a report in the chart, what you may get quality credit for without even putting it in the note. Things like these. Figure out whether you want a bunch of different templates for different ages or medical conditions. Maybe just a few templates, and then typing in the middle to bring in other things may work best for you. At the time of this recording, my clinic is currently working on standardizing our well-visit templates for children. Another clinic in the system has already done this, and a few of my colleagues are already trialing theirs and fitting it to our workflows. In looking at your own template revisions, there will be changes to your workflow. For some of you, these changes will be small, others bigger. In my clinic, my note will likely have some of the things in a different spot and add or subtract other elements to suit the agreed upon template. While it means a little extra time learning where the things are, it promises consistency and efficiency gains that will ultimately help me and my colleagues. Rather than squelch the art of medicine, it should actually enhance it by getting credit for certain quality measures, by having certain things added to the note more easily. It will hopefully free me up as the physician to have more time to do motivational interviewing that often adds the value, the true quality that we want to be adding as physicians. So navigation, orders, notes. The fourth domain is messages. Those inbox messages with results, phone calls, messages from other physicians or staff. Some medical records have more customizability with the messaging, and you could potentially pre-populate where the message routes back to or what guidance you give. For instance, my 12 and 24-month-old patients get screened for anemia and elevated lead levels, so I have buttons that will queue up a results message to my staff to pass along to the family that I can customize before sending. Again, how can you find ways to reduce clicks and keystrokes? There are those efficiency gains, and then there are the behavioral ones. How often do you need to check the messages? For me, the notifications and habits that I have formed around checking my smartphone have also increased the frequency that I check my messages in the medical record. The inbox is embedded within my medical record, and it is so tempting to check between patients. The high priority messages flag themselves differently, so I can see them more quickly, as I should, but I need to otherwise batch my other messages. This may mean checking only a few times a day, taking care of the messages at those times when I can stay in the flow and answer a bunch of messages at the same time. Which leads me to the bonus topic or domain in charting, which is paperwork. Though not on the medical record itself, there is a paper mailbox for most of us that has faxes to sign, physical forms to complete, or other requests or records for review. Checking a limited number of times per day or per week as appropriate allows you to remain consistent and efficient. Batching these also can be beneficial since they physically take up space on your desk as you review them, potentially sorting things for scanning versus things your clinic team will end up faxing. So batching works for messaging and paperwork, whether I'm printing a physical form from the record as a result of the telephone call message requesting its completion, or whether I'm sorting that outside shot record that will need to be manually entered. Navigation, orders, notes, messages, and paperwork. I leave you now with this challenge. Take one domain each week for the next month and write out 3 things that you want to change or focus on in each of those domains. Make it a specific goal, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Then, at the end of the week, write down what happened and how that made you feel. For this first week, pick which area or domain you're going to focus on and post it on social media along with one of the action steps you're committing to trying. Tag me at MedEdWell on Instagram or Twitter. Now, take a moment and imagine, a month from now, if you were 5% more efficient in each of these areas, applying some of these tips and principles, what would that look like to you? Would you actually get a lunch break where you could take a quick walk outside on it? Or take a lunch break and then finish any additional charting so you were all caught up going into the afternoon? Would it look like making it home for dinner? For your kids' sporting event? To get them from daycare? To have your evenings free from the stress hanging over your head of all the stuff you still had to do? What would that mean to you? Your wellness? Commit to taking that next step in your wellness today professionally, since I know from experience that gains in charting efficiency make a huge difference in personal wellness also. Thank you again for joining me here on another episode of the MedEdWell Podcast. I can't wait to hear how you've put some of these things into practice as you get more of your charting done during your workday. I want this to support all aspects of your wellness by not bringing as much work home with you or having to stay quite as late afterwards. Please subscribe to the podcast and share this episode with a colleague of yours or even your entire office. I think this episode is especially relevant since charting is one of the things I hear complaints about most often as a professional dissatisfier. Take that next step in your wellness today, and I'll see you back here for the next episode. Have a great day. And now for our important disclaimer. Dr. Ryan Stegink is a practicing general pediatrician, but the MedEdWell podcast does not reflect the views, opinions, or belief of his employer nor his affiliated university. Additionally, the MedEdWell podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered advice regarding financial, legal, student loan, medical, or any other specific topic. In such a case, you should seek consultation with a certified professional in that particular area. Again, thanks for joining us on the MedEdWell podcast, and have a great day.